Welcome to Pillow Time Lore, where dreams take shape and stories wrap around you like your favorite blanket. You've made it through the day, and now it's time to slow down, breathe deeply, and drift into a world made just for you. So, fluff up your pillow, snuggle into your coziest spot, and let your eyes get heavier with each word. This is your moment. No to-do lists, no noise, just stillness and a little magic. With each breath in, feel the tension melt from your shoulders. With each breath out, let go of everything that doesn't serve your peace. You're safe here. Tonight's story is soft and soothing, like a warm cup of tea for your thoughts, carefully crafted to calm your busy mind and help you drift gently into sleep. So close your eyes, dear dreamer. Let your imagination wander while I carry you into a land where anything is possible and everything ends in peace. This is Pillow Time Lore. Leo lived in a town that was always buzzing with noise. Cars honked, people talked loudly, and machines hummed all day long. But Leo found his comfort in the quiet. He loved the hush of the woods behind his house and the gentle whispers of the wind through the leaves in the forest. He didn't have to talk. He could just be. He felt a bit different from everyone else, like a quiet song in a world full of shouting. One rainy afternoon, with the town's noise feeling louder than ever, Leo went to his grandfather's old shed. The shed was a beautiful, dusty place, full of memories. It smelled of wood and old stories. He loved to look at all the things his grandfather had collected: old tools, broken birdhouses, and forgotten books, tucked away in a small wooden chest under a pile of old blankets. Leo found a very old, folded map. It was made of thick, yellowed paper that felt soft in his hands. He opened it carefully. It wasn't a map of the town or any place he knew. Instead, it was covered in strange, curly symbols and drawings of little fireflies. They weren't just simple dots. They were drawn with care, each one a tiny point of light. The map seemed to be a path, a winding line that went through a forest he knew was his. A feeling of deep wonder filled Leo's heart. This map felt different from anything he had ever seen. It felt like a silent secret, a story waiting to be told. The loud world outside the shed felt very far away. He looked at the fireflies on the map, and he felt a quiet hum of connection. The map felt like a message, a secret just for him. The boy who loved the quiet, he knew, with a certainty that was as quiet as the forest itself, that this map was meant to be his, and that it was the beginning of an adventure. Leo carried the old, folded map from the shed back to his room. The noise from the town outside faded away, replaced by the quiet of his own thoughts. He carefully unfolded the map on his desk, smoothing out the worn yellow paper up close. It was even more of a mystery. It wasn't a map of roads or rivers. It was a winding path of faint, delicate lines, dotted with small circles that seemed to glow in his mind. The drawings of the fireflies were scattered along this path, like tiny stars on a dark sky. As he looked closer, a small, tiny piece of paper fell from a deep fold in the map. It was a little note, written in his grandfather's careful handwriting. The note had only a few words: "Follow the light of the Firefly King." Leo's eyes widened. He looked back at the map, and suddenly everything made sense. The map wasn't a set of directions for a place. It was a guide for an adventure. The fireflies weren't just drawings. They were the key. He realized the map was a code, a secret way to navigate the forest by watching and listening for its quietest lights. He imagined the fireflies like small, living lanterns, lighting the path his grandfather had drawn. This discovery was perfect for Leo. He didn't have to talk to anyone or deal with the loud noise of the town. This journey was about silence, about paying close attention to the whispers of nature. The map was a promise of a great, quiet adventure, an adventure that felt made just for him. He carefully refolded the map, his heart thumping with a quiet excitement he had never felt before. He knew that as soon as dusk came, he would follow the light, and a new story would begin. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Leo stepped into the quiet of the forest. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth and pine. In his hand, he held his grandfather's map, its worn paper feeling like a promise. The noise of the town was a faint hum behind him, and as he walked deeper, it faded away completely. He was now in his world, a world of rustling leaves and whispering wind. Leo found the spot where the first dot on the map was drawn, a small clearing next to a mossy stone. He waited, his heart beating with a soft, steady rhythm. The light in the forest grew dim, and he watched as the first stars began to appear. And then he saw it. A single, tiny firefly appeared from the shadows and began to glow. It hovered right over the first dot on his map, its light a perfect, soft guide in the fading twilight. A wave of wonder washed over Leo. The map was real. The firefly was the key. The Firefly King's light. With a deep breath, Leo began to follow. The firefly didn't fly quickly or wildly. It moved with a gentle, patient rhythm, its glow a steady light in the growing darkness. The forest, which he had always known to be a quiet place, now felt alive with a beautiful secret. He wasn't just walking through the woods. He was on a secret path, guided by a tiny star. The firefly led him deeper into the trees, past silent ferns and towering pines. After a while, he saw a group of tall, graceful birch trees. Their white bark seemed to shine in the moonlight, and their leaves rustled and shivered together, making a soft, whispering sound. The firefly came to a stop in the very middle of the grove, its light a beacon in the quiet woods. The first part of his journey was complete, and Leo knew his first discovery was waiting for him right there. The firefly led Leo into a grove of tall, slender birch trees. Their leaves rustled together in the night breeze, making a soft, whispering sound, as if they were sharing a secret with one another. Leo stood in the middle of the grove, his heart beating a quiet, steady rhythm. The firefly's light seemed to grow brighter, and the whispering of the trees grew louder, a gentle invitation. He listened carefully, and the sound seemed to be coming from a very old birch tree with a trunk so wide it looked like a great, silent guardian of the forest. The tree had a hollow at its base, a dark and secret place. He leaned down and peered inside. The hollow was not empty. Resting on a bed of soft moss was a single, beautiful feather. It was a normal feather, but it wasn't just a simple feather. It seemed to hold the light of the moon, giving off a soft, gentle glow. It wasn't a magical light. It was a natural light, a quiet glow that only the moonlight and a silent place could create. Leo reached in and gently took the feather. He felt its soft, silky texture in his hand, and he understood the map wasn't a magic map, and the feather wasn't a magic feather. His grandfather hadn't left him a path to spells, but a path to the natural wonders of the forest. The map was a guide to the hidden, beautiful secrets that were already there, waiting for someone to notice them. He was seeing the forest with new eyes, and he felt a profound sense of awe as he looked back at the firefly. It hovered over his map, and its light touched the next dot on the paper. The dot began to glow with a quiet new light, just like the feather in his hand. The firefly waited patiently, ready to guide him to the next secret of the forest. Leo and his firefly guide left the whispering grove. The glowing feather he had found was now tucked safely in his pocket, a quiet treasure. The firefly continued to lead the way, its light a tiny dancing star in the darkness of the forest. The next dot on the map was glowing with a faint, steady light, pulling them forward. Soon they heard the sound of water. They arrived at a great, winding river. It was too wide and fast to swim across, and there was no bridge in sight. The water, dark and cold, rushed over big stones. In the riverbed, Leo looked at his map, and the path went straight across the river. But how could he cross? He couldn't just walk on water. The firefly, as if sensing his worry, flew back and forth over the water, its light a small glowing beacon. Then the firefly flew down and landed on a stone right in the middle of the river. The stone glowed with its soft light. Leo looked at the firefly, and he understood. The firefly was showing him the path, one stone at a time. The map wasn't just a drawing, it was a test of trust. He took a deep breath, and with a careful step, he placed his foot on the first stone. The water rushed around his feet, cold and fast, but he kept his eyes on the firefly. The firefly moved with a gentle grace, flying from one stone to the next, its light marking the safe path. Leo followed, stepping carefully from stone to stone, his heart beating with a quiet courage. He had to trust his guide, a tiny firefly, to keep him safe, he reached the other side. His legs a little shaky, but his heart full of pride. He had crossed the river, not with a bridge, but with trust and a tiny guiding light. The firefly waited for him, its light now a steady glow, and the next dot on the map shone with a new, quiet purpose. As Leo reached the other side of the river, a new sense of quiet accomplishment filled him. He had crossed the river, and the firefly's light seemed to shine even brighter now. The air on this side of the river was different, filled with the scent of wildflowers and ancient trees. He looked at his map, and the firefly hovered over the next dot, a tiny point of light deep in the woods. A rustle in the ferns caught his attention. Stepping out from behind a large, musk-over rock was an old, wise-looking badger. The badger was not a magical creature from a fairy tale, but a true guardian of the forest, with eyes that held the quiet knowledge of 1,000 seasons. He looked at Leo, then at the firefly, and gave a slow, knowing nod. "You have a good guide," the badger said, in a voice that was soft like the earth. "That map is not a map to a place, but a test of a person's character, a test of patience and kindness. The Firefly King gives his map only to those who love the quiet and can listen to the silent whispers of the forest," he explained. That the map was not for the loud and hurried, but for the calm and observant. The firefly had not just been a guide, it had been a test. By following its slow, patient light, Leo had proven his own patience and his love for the forest's gentle secrets. The badger then reached into a small pouch and gave Leo a smooth, polished stone. "Listen to the stones," he said. "They hold the echoes of the forest's oldest stories." Leo took the stone. It felt cool and heavy in his hand, and he knew it was not just a stone. It was a new tool for his journey, a way to listen even more closely to the world around him. He thanked the badger, and the badger gave a final nod before disappearing back into the ferns. Leo looked at his firefly, and a new sense of purpose filled his heart. He was on a journey of discovery, and the forest itself was now his teacher. Leo and his firefly guide continued their journey, walking deeper into the forest. The polished stone the badger had given him was a quiet weight in his hand, and he felt a new sense of purpose with every step. The firefly's light pulsed steadily, leading him down a winding path that grew darker and narrower with every passing moment. Soon, the firefly came to a stop in front of a wall of thick, green ivy. Behind it, a small opening, a hidden cave entrance, was revealed. Leo's heart beat with a quiet courage. He wasn't afraid of the darkness. He trusted his guide. He gently pushed aside the ivy and stepped inside. The air was cool and smelled of stone and damp earth. His footsteps echoed in the darkness, and for a moment he could see nothing at all. He held the polished stone in his hand, and the firefly flew around him, its light a small, comforting presence. Then he looked at the cave walls. he saw that they were covered in tiny, glowing fungi, like a sky full of stars. The cave wasn't scary or cold. It was beautiful and peaceful. The fungi glowed with a soft, natural light, and the entire cave seemed to be humming with a silent, gentle energy. He looked at the stars on the cave walls, and he felt as if he was floating in a silent universe of light. Suddenly, the polished stone in his hand began to glow. It wasn't its own light, but a reflection of the fungi's light, a pure, gentle glow that seemed to come from within. The stone reflected the light and showed him a single path to follow. Leo looked at the glowing stone, and he understood. The badger hadn't given him a magic stone. He had given him a tool to see the beauty and the light that was already there. The stone was now his compass, and the cave was a beautiful, secret map. He followed the light, his heart full of a quiet wonder, ready to see where the path would lead him next. As Leo and his firefly guide emerged from the cave of 1,000 lights, a beautiful, open glade appeared before them. The moonlight streamed down through the branches of the great trees, creating a soft, silver glow on the mossy ground. The glade was a silent, peaceful place, the heart of the forest. In the center of the glade, on a throne made of moss and old roots, sat the Firefly King. He wasn't a king from a fairy tale with a crown and a cape. He was a firefly, but he was very old and very bright, the brightest light in the entire forest. His glow was a beautiful, steady light that pulsed with a quiet wisdom. The firefly that had guided Leo bowed its light to him, and Leo knew he was in the presence of something very special. "Welcome, Keeper of the Quiet," the Firefly King said, his voice a soft, beautiful sound that seemed to come from the rustling of the leaves and the gentle hum of the night. The map was a gift from a grandfather to a grandson. It was a test of patience, a test of kindness, and a test for a boy who loves the silent secrets of the forest. The king explained that the forest had its own kind of magic, a silent light that could not be found with noise and speed. It was a light that only revealed itself to those who were willing to listen and to watch. Leo had passed the test. He had found the hollow tree's quiet glow, trusted the tiny firefly's path across the river, and listened to the stone's echoes. "You have found the light of the forest," the Firefly King said, his glow growing a little brighter. "Now, you must take the silent light with you." The king's light was not a magical light. It was a symbol of all the quiet, beautiful discoveries Leo had made. The boy who loved silence now had a new purpose. He was to be a keeper of the light, a boy who would remind his town to find the quiet beauty in their own lives. The Firefly King's words settled in Leo's heart like a gentle whisper. He looked at the old, wise firefly, and he felt a deep sense of purpose. He understood that the greatest light was not in the noise and busyness of his town, but in the quiet, gentle glow of the forest, a light that could only be found by a patient heart. "You have found the light of the forest," the king said, his voice a soft rustle of leaves. "Now, you must take the silent light with you." The king gestured with a soft glow toward a small, shimmering seed that sat on the mossy throne. The seed was not made of magic, but of a wood so ancient it seemed to hold the light of 1,000 fireflies. It glowed with a beautiful, soft energy, a light that felt as warm and peaceful as the moon. Leo gently took the seed, and as his fingers closed around it, he felt a deep sense of connection to the forest, to the Firefly King, and to his grandfather who had left him the map. With the seed in his pocket and his firefly guide showing him the way, Leo began his journey home. The forest, which had once felt like a secret escape, now felt like a part of him. He was no longer just a boy walking in the woods. He was a keeper of its light. He walked with a new rhythm, a silent, peaceful step that felt in tune with the trees and the wind. As he got closer to his town, the sounds of cars and people talking started to return, but this time, the noise didn't bother him. The loud world of his town no longer felt like a place he didn't belong. He had the silent light of the seed with him, a quiet reminder that the greatest light can be found in the most unexpected of places. The seed was a beautiful, small treasure that held the glow of the fireflies and the silent wisdom of the forest. He knew that his journey was not over. He had to share the light, not by shouting, but by planting a new, quiet kind of light in his town. He arrived at his house, feeling a deep peace. He no longer felt like an outsider. He had found his place in the world, a place between the busy town and the quiet forest. He held the seed, and its soft light was a promise of a new, beautiful beginning. Leo returned to his home, no longer the boy who just loved silence, but a boy who understood its light. The glowing seed, a quiet treasure from the heart of the forest, felt warm in his hand. He went to his backyard, a small patch of green, nestled between two loud, busy streets in the center of his garden. He gently dug a small hole and placed the seed inside. He covered it with soil, a silent promise to the fireflies and the forest. He wasn't sure what would happen, but he waited. Days turned into nights, and the busy town kept humming. But in Leo's garden, a quiet change was happening. A small sapling sprouted from the ground, and as it grew, its leaves began to glow with a soft, gentle light. It wasn't a bright, electric light, but a quiet, living glow, just like a tiny forest of fireflies. The light from the tree didn't just stay in his garden. It was a gentle, humble light that spread to the entire town. People walking by would slow down, their faces catching the soft glow. They started to notice the quiet moments in their own lives, the gentle rustle of leaves, the quiet sound of their own footsteps on the pavement, the soft hum of the wind. They were reminded to slow down and listen, to find the quiet beauty in their noisy world. Leo, standing in his garden, finally felt a sense of belonging. He was no longer an outsider. He had found his place, not by joining the noise, but by bringing the quiet light of the forest to his town. He had become the keeper of the fireflies, a boy who reminded everyone to look for the gentle, silent light that had been there all along. One evening, as the sun went down, Leo sat under the glowing tree. The town was still a little loud, but the noise no longer bothered him. He was surrounded by the gentle light of the tree, a beautiful, living reminder of his adventure. He closed his eyes and listened to the quiet, and in that quiet, he could hear the whisper of the wind, the rustling of the leaves, and the silent song of the fireflies. He knew the light he had found in the forest was now a part of him and a part of his town. The boy who loved silence had finally found his voice in the most beautiful and quiet of ways.